Pleased to say Republican Congressman Mike Flood of Nebraska is joining us. He's also vice chair of the Main Street Caucus. Congressman, welcome to Bloomberg TV and radio. Thank you for being here. Is it Main Street's view that the only way to really make sure the entire legislative agenda Donald Trump wants to get done gets done is one big bill?
Well, I would say the overwhelming majority of Main Street members in our caucus would say one bill, but that's not to say there aren't a handful of folks that see value in the two-bill solution. Ultimately, this is President Trump's call. We're ready to roll. I think it's important that we make this decision and then we start to plan from it, because time is ticking and we need to get active on everything that we're doing as soon as possible. We're going to have a lot of things that unfold here. We've got the Trump tax cuts expiring at the end of the year. There's really no time for delay.
Congressman, it's good to have you on Bloomberg. The president-elect saying, I don't want to see a debt ceiling default. I do want to see a debt ceiling extension. How will you get to it?
Well, I was talking to some of my colleagues this morning after our conference. At the end of the day, this isn't about whether or not America's going to pay its bills. America's always going to pay its bills, because not dealing with the debt ceiling is a default. And a default is not good in a very major way for America, our economy, our markets, our position in the world. Ultimately, I think we're going to deal with this in a way that's very responsible. This year is going to be a lot about cutting spending. And I don't know that every American knows how serious we are about doing this. I speak for a lot of members of the Main Street Caucus. I know that the House Freedom Caucus and so many other of my colleagues, we're talking about making serious funding cuts that will hopefully make these debt ceiling discussions less relevant going forward. But certainly we're going to deal with the debt ceiling, whether it's a 2-year extension in an amount that meets that standard, or it's wiping it away while we sort these problems out. I'm confident we're going to find a solution and it will work just fine.
Well, obviously, the debt ceiling addition in a continuing resolution before the 2024 year ended in the last Congress, Congressman, what caused a bit of trouble. And the deal that Republicans reached, at least in theory, was, yes, you will get a debt limit extension that will be passed when needed this year. You will also get something to the tune of $2.5 trillion in spending cuts, I believe. How is that possible without touching Social Security and Medicare?
Well, obviously, we're going to go through the process of reconciliation. And we spent all day Saturday at Fort McNair here in Washington talking about what are some of the mandatory spending expenditures that we could address. And there are a number of opportunities that we've identified outside of Social Security, which, by the way, you can't even touch Social Security in the reconciliation process, and outside of Medicare benefits provided to Americans. There are mandatory spending programs that we've identified, and I think in the next couple of weeks, maybe in the next month and a half, the committees of jurisdiction are going to start putting forward proposals that Americans are going to have to get their hands around. This is not going to be done without pain. And after Saturday, I went home, thought about it, and I said, you know what? If we're really going to tackle the deficit, there is going to be a considerable amount of tough choices we need to make. And we need to prepare Americans to confront this very serious problem that we have in spending. And it will be the story of March and April when people see what we're proposing.
Well, this has already become a more serious conversation than we typically have with lawmakers about this, Congressman. So if we could get more detailed, at least in your view, where's the pain, if not at the Pentagon or, to Kayleigh's point, entitlements?
Well, there's basically 12 pages of opportunities that we looked at over the course of Saturday that come from different committees of jurisdiction. Some of them deal with the types of reimbursements we make to different types of medical providers. There's a whole system out there that's been developed over the years. It's very complicated, and sometimes we treat hospitals one way and we treat private practice physicians a different way. The reality is it's the same service both places. And so we need to have these conversations like, what should the policy be as we reimburse providers? Now, we're not talking about taking benefits away from Americans that need medical care. But as you'll see in the next couple of months, there's areas from from the committees of jurisdiction, energy and commerce, education and workforce. I mean, all of these different committee chairs are working diligently and are sitting down with all of us. And that's the process we have right now. I'm going to a meeting later today in the Speaker's office, and we're just talking about, okay, how will this work? What is the timing? What committees have to be involved? And who in the conference needs to be at these meetings so that they can have their voices heard? We have no room for error. We have to get to 218 votes. We can spare only one vote on a very, very narrow process. So hopefully we can get there.
Well, and as we count those votes, what role are Democrats going to have to play in all of this, Congressman?
Well, as long as we're talking about reconciliation, obviously, if we can act as a majority in the House and our colleagues in the Senate can use the reconciliation process, this will be a very Republican-driven agenda. Now, I'm under no illusions. Outside of reconciliation, we're going to have to find bipartisan solutions. We've only got 53 votes in the Senate. There will be a number of opportunities for bipartisan agreement. But as it relates to reconciliation, and here are the topics in reconciliation that I think are relevant: border, spending, tax cuts, and energy. And I'm sure there'll be other things thrown in, but that's where I think we're going.
Has anyone talked to the parliamentarian about this, Congressman? Because there are concerns, and we heard John Thune talk about this, that whatever is crafted in the House could crash into a wall in the Senate, where it's going to have a bird bath, the bird rule that makes it clear that if outside of budgetary items, we don't have a reconciliation bill. Are you worried that border policy may be at risk by using this method?
Well, we're pretty confident the border policy provisions that we're interested in can be in there. We talked about this last Saturday at Fort McNair. We're going to be working hand in glove with John Thune over in the Senate. The bird rule has 6 different provisions that have to be followed. I cannot imagine we would pass a bill out of the House that hadn't been vetted through the Senate parliamentarian with the help of the majority leader over there. That would be a colossal waste of everyone's time and jeopardize this entire effort. That was one of the questions that was asked last Saturday. How do we ensure that what the House does passes the muster over in the Senate? Otherwise, this is an exercise in futility.
Congressman, you also have a seat on the House Financial Services Committee, so I'd like to ask you about the news we got yesterday from the Fed's Vice Chair of Supervision, Michael Barr, that he does intend to step back from that role, though he will stay on as a governor. The now chair of that Financial Services Committee, Fred Shelley, your colleague, was on Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. This is what he had to say about a potential replacement, and we'll have you respond.
Mickey Bowman's done an outstanding job as a governor on the Federal Reserve. She comes to the Federal Reserve with practical experience, both as a bank commissioner in Kansas, as well as a family connected to community banking business there in the heartland. She's been a great voice for common sense and tailoring and regulation. And I think she would be, if President Trump made that decision, that would be, in my view, a good one.
So the chairman is advocating for Michelle Bowman here, Congressman. Do you also think that would be a good choice?
Well, obviously, I'm from the heartland. My state is filled with community banks. And, you know, after Silicon Valley Bank's collapse and the FDIC rushing in and doing the right thing, and then watching a state bank collapse in Oklahoma without the same kind of attention, I think that this is a really good move for the Federal Reserve. Our nation is built on the backs of community banks. And to have someone that has that feet on the ground perspective, I think, is important. The Federal Reserve is going to play an important role in our government, especially with Donald Trump coming into the White House. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, you know, Michael Barr and his Basel III and everything that's happened, we're going to turn a page and we're going to see a new Federal Reserve, hopefully, a new leadership of the Federal Reserve and big things ahead.
Congressman, I know you have to go vote, and I want to thank you for joining us, making his debut here on Bloomberg TV and radio, the gentleman from Nebraska's 1st District, Representative Mike Flood. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lyons in Washington. Hour 2 of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg Radio, and we're off and running on Bloomberg TV. Thank you for making us part of your Tuesday as we assemble our signature panel with a lot to talk about.